The sky above Earth shimmered with an eerie, unnatural glow. Alien warships, massive and imposing, hung in the atmosphere like dark moons, their engines thrumming with power. The Earth's military had scrambled everything they could muster, but it was all futile. The invaders, the Ignari, were here to destroy, not conquer, and nothing humanity had was a match for their overwhelming technology. In the command center beneath the Earth's surface, Captain Elena Torrens stood in front of the holographic display, her fists clenched at her sides. The map of Earth was dotted with red marks, each one a target that the alien ships had already locked onto. The countdown to humanity's extinction had begun. "Captain, we need to make a decision," said Lieutenant Harper, his voice tight with fear. He was a young officer, still in his early 20s, and despite his best efforts to hide it, the terror in his eyes was unmistakable. Elena didn't look at him. Instead, her gaze remained fixed on the display, analyzing the approaching ships. It wasn't that she couldn't feel fear, it was just that she had learned, long ago, to suppress it. She wasn't a hero. She was just someone who would do whatever it took to protect those who depended on her. Her mind raced, but there were no options left. No miracles to expect. "We don't have a choice. We launched the counterattack," Elena said, her voice flat and determined. Harper's face paled. "But Captain, the odds are impossible." "Yes," she interrupted, her gaze flicking to him finally. Her tone softened, but the steel in it never wavered. "But we do it anyway. I don't know how, but we will find a way." The crew around them shifted, uneasy. They were all aware of the reality. They were about to face their final stand. But Elena's unwavering resolve seemed to ignite something in them. Despite the overwhelming odds, they followed her lead. As they prepared the counterattack, a strange sense of unity spread through the room. For the first time, they weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for something greater. Outside the command center, Dr. Nathaniel Quinn, a brilliant but eccentric scientist, paced back and forth. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the incredible discovery he had just made. Alone in his lab, he had unlocked the ancient code embedded in the human genome, a power that had been hidden for millennia. It wasn't just their minds, but their very bodies that contained a secret weapon, a power greater than anything Earth scientists had ever imagined. The problem? No one had ever known how to harness it. He stood at the doorway to the command center, hesitating. He had to tell Elena, but there was no time. The world was ending, and no one would be able to fully understand what he had uncovered in the chaos. As if reading his thoughts, Elena's voice crackled over the intercom, urgent. "Dr. Quinn, we need you at the control center now." The words hit him like a jolt of electricity. He wasn't ready to share this yet. Not like this. But the world had no time for preparation. "I'm on my way," he muttered to himself, taking a deep breath and steeling himself for the unknown. He had discovered something that could change everything, if only they could unlock it before the aliens wiped them out. As the first blast from the Ignari ship struck Earth's surface, the world seemed to tremble in response. Elena Torren, at the helm of humanity's final stand, had no idea that she was about to discover what it meant to truly be human. The battle for Earth was far from over, and it would not be fought with weapons alone. The clock was ticking. Dr. Nathaniel Quinn's heart pounded as he raced through the dimly lit hallways of the command center. Every moment felt like an eternity. The alien bombardment continued above, shaking the earth, the sounds of destruction reverberating through the walls. Yet, it was the knowledge he carried in his mind, the discovery that could save them, that weighed heavier than the crushing fear gnawing at his insides. His boots echoed in the narrow corridor as he approached the control room, the hum of emergency lights casting an eerie glow. The doors slid open with a mechanical hiss, and Elena Torren looked up from the display, her sharp gaze never wavering. "Dr. Quinn, I need your report," she said, her voice cool and authoritative. Nathaniel swallowed hard. He was no soldier, no tactician, he was a scientist. But this was different. I've found something," he said, his voice trembling despite himself. "Something buried deep within humanity's genetic code." A dormant power. If we can unlock it. A power? Elena raised an eyebrow, her skepticism evident. You're saying we have a weapon hidden in our genes? Nathaniel nodded, though he could see she wasn't convinced. I know it sounds unbelievable. I never thought it myself until I uncovered the research, the anomalies in human DNA. It's like a blueprint. A key to something vast, something that could shift the balance of this war. Elena didn't speak right away, her eyes scanning the data scrolling across her screen. She was always calculating, always 10 steps ahead, but the strain on her face now was undeniable. She was losing hope, just like the rest of them. What are you proposing? She asked finally. I need time, he admitted, pacing the floor. We need to understand this code, to awaken it. It's not just about brute force. It's about tapping into what makes us human at our core, the resilience, the ingenuity. But I need... You don't have time, Elena interrupted, her tone sharp. The urgency in her voice rang clear. The Ignari are about to land. The entire Eastern Hemisphere is already under attack. Time is something we don't have. Nathaniel's frustration bubbled to the surface. Then we fight like we always have, blindly, desperately. Or we take a chance on something that could change everything. The room fell into silence, the hum of machinery the only sound between them. Elena stared at him, her jaw set. Nathaniel saw the conflict in her eyes, the very real possibility that this might be their only hope, and the equally real fear that it might fail. We need a plan now, she said, her voice steadier than it had been. But if this really works, if you're right, it could turn the tide. I'm giving you 1 hour, Quinn. Do what you can. Relief washed over Nathaniel, though it was quickly replaced by the weight of the responsibility he now bore. I'll need volunteers, soldiers, pilots. People who are willing to trust me. Elena nodded. I'll arrange it. As Nathaniel moved to leave, his mind already working through the next steps, Elena's voice stopped him. Quinn, if this doesn't work, what happens then? He turned back, meeting her gaze. For the first time in the chaos of the invasion, he allowed himself to feel the weight of their impending doom. Then we fall back on what we know best, survival. But I don't think we'll need to. He hoped, with every fiber of his being, that he was right. The room was still as he stepped out, leaving Elena with a single, profound question. Could humanity's hidden potential truly save them from annihilation? Time would tell, but the countdown had already begun. The planet trembled under the unrelenting assault from the Ignari. Their warships, enormous and menacing, hovered just above the atmosphere, their weapons turning cities to ashes with a single blast. The air smelled of scorched earth, and the sky above had turned an ominous shade of red, filled with the detritus of a world on the brink of extinction. Nathaniel Quinn stood at the head of the makeshift command center, a dimly lit room filled with screens flickering with chaotic information. Time was running out. Elena tore and paced across the floor, her eyes fixed on a holographic map of the battlefield. Her face was taut, streaked with the exhaustion of days spent fighting a losing war. If your theory doesn't work, we're done for, she said, her voice cutting through the heavy air. Nathaniel clenched his jaw. The weight of the words settled over him like a storm cloud. But there was no turning back now. I know, he replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. But we don't have another choice. If we don't awaken the power within us, we'll be wiped out. Elena shot him a skeptical glance. I'm not convinced. You're asking for a leap of faith when we're already on the edge of extinction. Every moment we wait is another one closer to our annihilation, Nathaniel said. He could feel his heart beating in his chest, the pressure mounting with every passing second. His fingers hovered over a keyboard, entering the final commands. If we unlock the power, we could turn the tide. Humanity's greatest weapon lies within us. We just need to unleash it. Elena didn't respond immediately. She looked at the screen, where a countdown clock ticked relentlessly forward, mocking their desperate race against time. You'd better be right, she muttered. Her eyes were hard, but something behind them, fear maybe, kept her from speaking further. As Nathaniel glanced up, The door to the command center opened, and a team of volunteers entered. Among them was Captain Marcus Hayes, a seasoned veteran with a reputation for quick thinking and unyielding courage. He saluted Elena before turning to Nathaniel. "Doctor," Hayes said gruffly, "we're ready for whatever you throw at us. Just tell us what to do." Nathaniel nodded, steeling himself. "I'm activating the protocol now. I need you to link up with the neural interface. When it's triggered, it will unlock a dormant ability in your DNA, a latent human potential." Hayes gave him a hard stare, not entirely convinced, but willing to trust. "We don't have time for failure. Just make it work, Quinn." As the team donned the neural connection headsets, Nathaniel initiated the sequence. The room filled with a low hum, and strange patterns of light danced across the screens as the technology interfaced with the volunteers' minds. For a moment, there was nothing but the soft buzz of machines and the anxious anticipation of the room's occupants. Then, suddenly, a surge of energy crackled through the air. Marcus Hayes jerked backward, his body seizing, before he dropped to his knees, gasping for air. His eyes flickered open, glowing with an unnatural light, the power coursing through him visible on his face. Nathaniel's heart skipped a beat. It was working. "Captain?" Elena rushed to his side, her hands hovering over him in concern. Hayes stood slowly, his muscles rippling beneath the strain of whatever had just been unleashed. "I feel stronger," Marcus whispered, his voice strained but steady. He clenched his fists, and for a moment, the air around him seemed to warp, bending in response to his newfound strength. This is more than I could have imagined." Nathaniel's eyes widened. The human potential he had uncovered was more than just raw power. It was a force that could rewrite the rules of warfare. Elena, still processing the scene before her, spoke cautiously. "Can you control it?" Marcus looked at his hands, the power swirling around him like a storm contained within flesh. "I'll learn," he said, determination settling in his expression. "We all will." Nathaniel turned to the map, his eyes flicking to the massive alien fleet still hovering above the planet. Their destruction loomed closer by the minute. The clock was ticking. "Time to show the Ignari just how dangerous we really are," Nathaniel said, his voice resolute. The team stood ready. The battle for humanity's survival had just begun, and with the power they had unlocked, they were no longer the prey. The battle raged outside, but inside the dimly lit command center, a strange stillness had descended over the team. The hum of technology and the flickering lights were the only reminders of the war still being fought just beyond the walls. Nathaniel Quinn stood before a bank of monitors, scanning the real-time updates of the Ignari fleet. The once dominant force was now a shadow of its former strength, but they had underestimated humanity's resolve. Marcus Hayes flexed his hands, his muscles coiling like springs beneath his uniform. The power that had surged through him only hours before was still vibrant in his veins, but it was raw, untamed. "I can feel it," he said, his voice low and focused. "The energy. It's everywhere. We're not just fighting them. We're fighting their technology, their dominance. And we're winning." Elena Torin watched him with narrowed eyes. "You're saying that it's more than just strength?" "Much more," Marcus replied, his gaze intense. "We're tapping into something bigger than ourselves. Something human. I can feel the pulse of humanity's potential, the will to fight, to survive. It's unimaginable." Nathaniel couldn't afford to let his optimism cloud his judgment. The Ignari were relentless. He turned from the screens and fixed his gaze on Marcus. "It's not enough to feel it. We need to use it. We need to strike at the heart of their fleet and end this war before their reinforcements arrive." Elena clenched her fists, her eyes darting between Nathaniel and Marcus. "And you think we can just walk in and dismantle their entire fleet? They're not some faceless alien threat anymore, Quinn. They've been strategizing for centuries. They won't go down that easily." Nathaniel met her gaze, his face taut with the weight of responsibility. "We're not just walking in. We're going to hit them where it hurts. We have something they don't, unity. And the power of human potential." Marcus took a step forward, a glimmer of determination lighting up his eyes. Let's show them what it means to mess with humanity. Together, we're stronger than any weapon they have. The tension in the room tightened. Elena looked at them, her skepticism giving way to something deeper, resolve. All right, she said, her voice steady. If you think this will work, then I'm in. But we do it my way. We strike at their weak points, no more going in blind. Nathaniel nodded. Agreed. As the team assembled their plan, a sudden surge of data flooded the monitors. The Iknari fleet had begun to reposition, an apparent counterattack was in motion. The time for strategy had ended. Now, the only option was to act. We need to move now, Nathaniel barked, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had just seen the future of their world teetering on the edge of destruction. The team rushed to their positions, the hum of anticipation filling the air. Marcus, Elena, and Nathaniel stood at the helm, each carrying the weight of humanity's hopes on their shoulders. But Nathaniel knew there was no turning back. This was it, the final push. They either crushed the Iknari or became history. Marcus's voice came through their earpieces, sharp and certain. I'm in position. We're good to go. Let's show them the power of humanity. Nathaniel hit the comms. All units, initiate the strike. Now. As the first wave of humanity's newly empowered forces surged toward the Iknari fleet, the sky above seemed to ripple with potential. The Iknari might have had the numbers and the advanced technology, but they were facing something new, something human. A sudden explosion rocked the ground beneath them. The Iknari had opened fire. Marcus's voice was calm, despite the chaos. Hold the line. Nathaniel's heart raced, his fingers brushing against the controls, but his mind was clear. This is our moment. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for our future. And with that thought, humanity's final stand began.